Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they released. Today we are talking about Shadow of the Vampire from 2000, put out by Lionsgate. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And once again, we have our super special guest from This Hat Oscar Bus rejoining again. It is Chris Feil. How are you?
I am emerging from the dark. I am in full vampire makeup. I am not speaking to anyone unless you address me as my vampire character. Hello.
I've been on the set for 2 weeks. Where have y'all been?
I have lived here. I'm a creature of the night.
Of course. We are, like I said, talking about Shadow of the Vampire from 2000. This premiered at Cannes, May 2000. It showed at TIFF, September 2000. Forgot to mention in the previous episode, The Gods and Monsters premiered at Sundance. Shadow of the Vampire opened limited on December 29th, 2000. So that's a wild release. In 6 theaters and maxed out to 513 theaters. It was a budget of $8 million. Opening weekend, 108,000, and a domestic / overall gross of 8.2 million. Top 5 films that weekend was Castaway, What Women Want, Miss Congeniality, The Family Man, and The Emperor's New Groove.
Hell yeah. Good time at the movies.
Emperor's New Groove still holds up. I have watched it twice in the past year. I think I mentioned this, but I got stoned with my entire family and watched Emperor's New Groove with them over the summer.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice.
Yeah, and my family hadn't seen it in 20 years. I still love that movie. It's so goddamn good.
Yeah, and then you were just like, all right, it's time for a David Spade double feature. We're putting on Joe Dirt 2, and then they all left.
Joe Dirt 2?
I haven't even seen Joe Dirt 1.
Oh, what are you... Did you not have Comedy Central growing up? What's going on?
I wasn't allowed to watch it most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Comedy Central was for, hey, let's plan a sleepover in which we stay up all night so we can watch South Park when our parents go to bed. That was what I used Comedy Central for as a kid. And it's kind of crazy to me now that show is still going on. Considering that
the show is going, they're making some insane amount. They're under contract to make something insane, 20 movies for Paramount Plus on top of the show. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Yeah. And then Charlie was at this smoke session. He was like, wait, but does anybody have a Crackle account? Because that's the only way to watch Joe Dirt 2. Anybody. No. Number 1 song of the U.S. this week is Independent Women by Destiny's Child. Hell yeah. And number 1 in Canada this week, Bryden, you have some explaining to do, is Liquid Dreams by O-Town, which, if we forget, is all about wet dreams from a boy band created from the first season of Making the Band.
However, if you listen to those lyrics, I think what the hidden subtext of Liquid Dreams is about a gay kid trying to match what his straight friends are saying about what's the ideal babe woman, right? Because if you look at those lyrics, this is a gay person speaking. It's like talking about Janet Jackson's smile. It's like a body like Jennifer. Jennifer who? Just Jennifer. Pick a Jennifer. It's a pretty gay song.
I only know that song because I used to listen to the podcast. What was it called? Was it Punch Up the Jam, I think, where they were
Punch Up the Jam,
yeah, and
yes.
They did an episode with David Sims from Blank Check, and they played a sample of a live performance of the song Liquid Dreams, and all the performers were super off key. Liquid Dreams, and it was really terrible. It was just,
my God.
Yeah.
I loved that podcast. I've definitely listened to that episode. I probably listened to every single one. It was so good.
Mm-hmm.
The chorus of the song is, I dreamed about a girl who's a mix of Destiny's Child. First of all, that is 3/4. That one. Just a little touch of Madonna's wild style with Janet Jackson's smile. throw in a body like Jennifer's, you've got the star of my liquid dreams.
I'm just imagining they're all
teenage boy who is attracted to women is talking about Madonna's
style.
Oh my god. I'm just imagining they're all in like Jeff Goldblum's got them all in like telepods for The Fly.
they're all, there's a verse here where they're all talking about staying up late and watching Who's That Girl, you know.
Christ.
Being really into Susan Seidelman because they watch Desperately Seeking Susan. Yeah. O-Town. Did O-Town have anything besides this album? I feel like probably not. I don't know. They sound pretty straight. Number 4 is on their album is Sexiest Woman Alive. Number 2 is Every 6 Seconds. Number 3 is just called Girl. Number 6 is called Shy Girl. And number 9 is called
What?
The Painter. Yeah, The Painter. Verse 1. If I were a painter mixing my colors, how could I ever find the blue of your eyes?
Oh dear.
How does this tie into Shadow of the Vampire? Anyway, Shadow of the Vampire follows F.W. Murnau, played by John Malkovich, who is struggling to create his silent classic Nosferatu on location in Eastern Europe. The director is obsessed with making this the most authentic vampire movie ever. To that end, Murnau has employed a real vampire, Max Schreck, played by William Dafoe, explaining to the crew that he's the ultimate of that new breed. The method actor Schreck will only appear in character and only at night. This was nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Dafoe and Best Makeup. I forgot to look up who won.
Benicio del Toro in Traffic.
Benicio del Toro.
Ah, that's right.
Which I really love Traffic. I know it's probably not aged as well as some of Soderbergh's other films, but I do love that Benicio won for that movie.
I don't think it ages as bad as you think. I'd just seen it for the first time like 2 years ago, and sure, a lot of it has a lot of like, you know what? Drugs are kind of bad, folks. And then Topher Grace is here for some reason, and Madison Bell from Swim Fan. But it's a fine movie.
It's a very understated performance from Del Toro too, especially in the ensemble of everyone in that movie too. I think it's kind of like it is kind of I don't know. I know that movie was a big hit and a big deal when it was out, but I feel like supporting performances, in terms of supporting performances, that's like kind of a curveball for back then. I don't know. Am I being?
Well,
he kind of built some momentum because he got really strong notices for The Usual Suspects, which of course won for Kevin Spacey. That's a double Soderbergh year. It's interesting that Albert Finney is also nominated in that category.
So strange.
It's so strange that Finney didn't win.
It's such a good performance.
I mean, he's very good.
Benicio del Toro is probably the closest thing to a lead that movie has.
Oh.
Like, SAG even put him in lead, and he won in lead, and he probably could have won the lead Oscar for Traffic too. But yeah, well, like my thing about Traffic is like, it's not so much that I think the movie itself is dated, but like, the love for that movie has like waned enough that it's like when people talk about Soderbergh in 2000, they talk about Aaron Brockovich. That's the movie that's become the classic. That's the movie that like people rewatch again and again. And then like Traffic, which is the one that even Soderbergh won his Oscar for, when he's also nominated for Aaron Brockovich, is like, you know, nobody talks about it as much.
A friend of mine got mad at me because I mentioned that, Del Toro won an Oscar for it, and he thought I was talking about Guillermo. So then when we watched Traffic, he was like, wait, isn't this Guillermo del Toro? I'm like, no, Benicio del Toro won an Oscar for it when we were teenagers, and he's like, oh, this is not what I was expecting. I was just like...
I thought that was the motherfucker that made Devil's Backbone. Why'd you lie to me?
Is he the only one who got nominated from that? Did Douglas get nominated? Zeta Jones did not, even though...
No, she was the big snub for that movie.
Yeah, which I kind of love. I know that's the most far-fetched plot line in that movie, but I do love scenes of her going to give like dolls made of cocaine to drug dealers, and then
She's
also
great.
being on the phone being like, this is our last chance to do this, get out of the car and shoot him in the head. And I don't know, it's almost campy. I don't know, I really love her in that movie, but I know some people have issue with that plot line. I don't know.
The other thing with like Soderbergh, you know, like that maybe not being like the love for having Wayne. I mean, Soderbergh for me is like one of those guys where it's kind of incredible that he's been making movies for over 30 years and he's so productive, making like, you know, like maybe 24 movies like across his career and everything, and like a lot of them are really good. Like I feel like if like most directors who are that productive and have worked for that long, there's at least like you could count like several like flops in that career and everything, but like with Soderbergh, it's like I don't know, like you could go like 10 movies deep and still find bangers in that filmography, and like Traffic maybe isn't in the top 5, but it's still really good.
I mean, Kimmy fucking rules, and that's 30 years in.
So much fun. That's my movie of the year so far, I think. That's
Kimmy rules.
Yeah. Best actress in a leading role this year is wild. Chris, I know you probably know this like the back of your hand, but Julia Roberts, Erin Brockovich, Ellen Burstyn, Requiem for a Dream, Joan Allen, The Contender, Juliette Binoche for Chocolat, and Laura Linney for You Can Count on Me. God damn.
I have a confession to make, which is back when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Requiem for a Dream, which we have covered for the show. And I was like, I hadn't seen Erin Brockovich, and I was just like, now how did Ellen Burstyn not win for that? And I watched Erin Brockovich like 2 years ago for the first time. I don't know how, as a gay man, that I just had never seen it. But then I watched it, I'm like, okay, no. She fucking
both of them are like 1A, 1B for me. It's just like when I first was looking up, I was like, oh, Ellen Burstyn was nominated for that. What was she nominated against? And I was like, all right, I see it.
Laura Linney too. I mean, catch me on the right day, and I'm voting for Laura Linney as well.
Yeah.
You Can Count on Me, so good.
Yeah, so good. I haven't seen The Contender, though.
I haven't either. Joan Allen, right?
Yes.
Joan Allen is really good. I mean, I kind of like that movie. It's kind of the type of political, like, schlock movie that doesn't exist anymore, and like watching it post the 2016 election, it's like you watch that movie now and you're like, oh, this is cute.
It's so cute.
It's a very entertaining movie. I kind of love Jeff Bridges in that movie. He intimidates Christian Slater with a sandwich. Fully.
Do you remember what kind of sandwich it was? Now I need to know what was on that sandwich.
It's like he mentioned something about a shark sandwich or something, but surely it's not shark.
I think it's his Oscar clip. Like that's like what there was that account I followed a while back that was about Oscar clips, and it was like that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, Bridges is so good in that movie. And Joan Allen's really good too. It's just kind of the culmination of a lot of, like, she was nominated for The Crucible, so it's like she was having her moment, and, you know, she was never going to win that year. I would even I mean, like, Chocolat is a movie that, like, everybody loved to jump on for 20 years, and I'm like, that's a perfectly nice movie. It's just like, it's when you talk about Binoche, like, you're never gonna mention that performance among her greatest, but like, I'm not mad at it.
I love Juliette Binoche. I have never seen Chocolat, and I've oddly enough never seen The English Patient. Even though I love Talented Mr. Ripley, I know I need to catch up with my Mingala.
English Patient fucking rules.
Oh.
Well, like, I mean, like, it got, I think, you know, that Seinfeld episode did a lot to
I was about to say, that's the only thing I can think of when
movie.
Just die already.
Right.
What's the movie that Julia Louis-Dreyfus goes to see? It's called like Sack Lunch or something.
How are they going to get out of that bag?
Yeah, I love The English Patient. But yeah.
Okay.
Defoe's nomination is
wild,
crazy.
That's
nuts. Awesome.
Yes.
But in hindsight, when I rewatched this movie, I was like, it is bug nuts that they went for this, and I'm so happy that they did.
Yeah. Yes. That's a wild one. Directed by E. Elias Marriage. Prior to this, Begotten in 1989. After this, Suspect Zero in 2004. Written by Stephen Katz, just going right over that. Pryor wrote 2 episodes on the Showtime anthology show Fallen Angels in 1993 and 1995. I think that's Soderbergh did a few episodes. I think that's how I've heard of that. After this, he wrote Wind Chill in 2007, which Yeah, and 4 episodes of The Nick in 2014 and 2015.
I forget. Kevin, you've seen Begotten. I
Yes.
had it available to me.
Yeah.
And I tried to work up some courage to watch that thing, but it was always like I was getting off from work at 1 a.m.
Oh,
and
that's
I
a
was
perfect
just like,
time to watch it.
but I just was never in the right mindset, and I feel bad because I should have done research because I've only heard about how insane and gross that movie is, but like, is it good? Like,
I don't really like it as a whole. The first 10 minutes, which is what all of the hubbub comes from, is that first 10 minutes. And that first 10 minutes is pretty fucking scary. Like, one of my friends says that it's like a documentary shot in hell, and I'm like, yeah, you're not that far off. But I wanted to rewatch it to give it another shot but that was like a 2 a.m. turn the lights out and just watch that wild shit. Especially after watching Suspect Zero, it's just like, yeah, I would like to give Begotten another chance.
There was a quote in the trailer, Critics' Choice, Time Magazine, quote, makes Eraserhead seem like Ernest Saves Christmas.
Those quotes are the worst. There's one on the Terrifier Blu-ray, which I'm not a Terrifier fan, but I just saw it, and it was just like, makes Pennywise look like Krusty the Clown. And it's just like, who are these people that are like, hell yeah, man. It's like, makes Kill Bill look like Looney Tunes or something like that.
You also said, Kevin, that like Marriage was like a music video director too, right? Like he directed Marilyn Manson music videos. Like
yes,
you said those are pretty good, right? Like the videos.
Yes, unfortunately, they're very good. Yes. Yeah, so that one must have been, those Antichrist Superstar, so that was like 96, 97-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So
is he doing like the Sweet Dreams video?
No, he did not Tourniquet, but he did Antichrist Superstar and Cryptic Kid, I believe. And that one actually had not been released until like 3 years ago or a few years ago. It showed up on YouTube, and then Antichrist Superstar, that music video, you know, the Marilyn Manson of it all, but it is very much like Begotten, to the point where he turned that in and they're just like, what the fuck? Like, this guy's on MTV and you made him into like a 1920s snuff film. What's going on? So they like never released it. So besides, he just has a weird career, because after Suspect Zero, he doesn't put out another quote unquote movie. Like, he's done like short films that have never really come out, or if they have, they've played at like a museum or two or something like that. It's just very weird career.
I find it so funny on Marriage's Wikipedia. Now, there's no source, but it looks like there is like an article about it on Fangoria. But like, it's like, he is currently supervising a reconstruction of the 1979 film Caligula, titled Gore Vidal's Caligula, that adheres more closely to Gore Vidal's screenplay. It's like, oh boy, I don't know how good that sounds.
Yeah, I don't see that happening after Suspect Zero, which I think made maybe $3.50. I don't know.
Yeah,
it made like literally like $3 million.
I mean, it was prime for, primo box office, coming out in the dog days of August, like Labor Day weekend.
Oh boy.
Charlie, what were you about to say?
I just remember, like, we mentioned this earlier, but I was, like, texting both of you. I was like, should I watch Suspect Zero? And both of you were like, no.
No.
And I was like, it was like, but Carrie Ann Moss is in it, right? And you were like,
so?
Barely. Yeah.
And all she does is walk in and just like Aaron Eckhart's just like, we used to date, remember that? And she's like, yeah. Now who's this serial killer?
I also, like, watching it, I thought, like, what movie is this reminding me of? And it was like, because, like, it will be, like, telepathic, like, finding serial killers through telepathy or whatever, and then, like, but, like, you'll get these, like, deeply saturated reds and, like, sort of bird's eye view shots and everything. I'm thinking, like, why does this remind me of, like, it reminded me of, like, Stir of Echoes, like, the scenes where, like, someone will
yes!
go up and it'll be, like,
a much better
like,
movie.
the sort of, like,
yeah.
honking horn noise or whatever, and, like, sort of, like, this electric hum, and, like, it will turn, like, completely red to show that there's evil in the house or whatever, and it's just, like, my gosh.
Which, yeah, when you think of evil, you think of Paris Geller from Gilmore Girls from
Right.
Stir of Echoes, yeah. Starring John Malkovich as F.W. Murnau. Prior to this, nominated for 2 supporting actor Oscars, and In the Line of Fire in 1993, and Places in the Heart in 1984, Dangerous Liaisons in 1988, and you did mention this, Charlie, but Mary Riley in 1996, being John Malkovich in 1999, and after this, primo Bride in Cinema Knockaround Guys in 2001, Jonah Hex in 2010, and Zoolander 2 in 2016, which we all saw.
I saw that. I don't remember him in that movie. I mean, there's like a billion cameos in that, so he probably...
It's kind of funny how, like, the 2010s, I thought there's so many movies that, like, our culture was obsessed with, where they were like, let's make a second one, it'll make all the money, like Bad Santa 2, Zoolander 2, Anchorman 2, and even we as a society were like, no. Like,
all those movies are why we don't have comedies anymore.
Yeah, basically.
It's like Zoolander 2 is the reason why studios don't make comedies.
Yeah.
I remember Anchorman 2 being not that bad.
There's
but
bits I still kind of like, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not terrible. I think it shouldn't be like 2 fucking hours long, and it shouldn't have a subplot where he randomly goes blind for no reason, but whatever. But yeah, I did not see Bad Santa 2. I did not see Zoolander 2, or the Dumb and Dumber actual sequel that we got.
Oh god, I did see that. Yeah, Kathleen Turner shows up, and, you know, low-hanging fruit jokes about how she's not hot anymore. Great.
Damn. Okay. Yeah.
Like, it's not good.
And then
Did the Farrelly brothers do that one too?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and then Peter Farrelly directed Green Book and won an Oscar. What a time.
Yeah.
I remember working Thanksgiving that year that Green Book opened. It would like open like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and no one showed up. And we were like, oh good, maybe this thing won't just die a sudden death. And then we were just stupefied by the fact that, like...
Stupefied!
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, God. I set myself up for that one.
The insistence in the press that it was a hit movie.
Yep.
Because it played like a hit movie.
No.
And then eventually they're like, see how much money it's made? And it's like, you've kept it in theaters for 6 months when no other movie gets that kind of treatment. So...
Yeah, you put guns to people's heads. You didn't like...
Yeah.
I mean, a similar thing happened with Coda last year, where they were literally, last year they were like, we're doing free screenings of Coda, and I'm like... Oh, okay. So that's how this is going to win, is literally just bring anyone in. And can I also just say, there is nothing, as someone who's worked in a movie theater for a very long time, no audiences are worse than free screenings. Like, they just are the worst people. Doesn't matter what your movie is, how pure of a heart that movie may have, those people are the worst.
Yeah, I would say that. I didn't work a free screening ever, but I was in a free screening of the movie Gifted from the director of 500 Days of Summer, and they pretended to like the movie the entire time. It was pretty wild.
I think I mentioned this to people earlier, but I did work a free screening last week of Bones and All, in which we gave out free ribs.
Perfect. Awesome.
That theater reeked when we cleaned it up. It was disgusting.
Willem Dafoe as Max Schreck prior to this, Streets of Fire in 1984, To Live and Die in LA in 1985, Body of Evidence in 1993, also Affliction in 1997, who could forget him, in Speed 2 Cruise Control. After this, Spider-Man in 2002, Antichrist in 2009, and a whole bunch of Abel Ferrara movies. Also starring Udo Kier, Carrie Elwes, and Eddie Izzard. Trivia. Well, I tried to listen to the commentary, and I got about 30 minutes in and turned it off. It made me, hate this movie even more, that Marriage is, the type of dude that's so, we have a close-up on Malkovich's eye, and then we go to an eye of the camera, and it just shows the duality of just how films are violence, and I was like, dude, shut up! I was like, you're making me like this movie less. But yeah, the 5 fucking minute intro to this movie where it goes on forever, he had this whole thing where it's it has people with spears because it's talking about the beginning of civilization and how they defended themselves, and that's just how the director, and I was like, shut up, dude. I could not take it. Based in part upon a legend that Max Schreck was in reality a vampire which is why he played the role of Orlok so well. Some variations of the legend suggest that Nosferatu was the only film Schreck made, though in reality he was already a stage and screen veteran by the time Nosferatu was shot and would appear in many non-vampiric roles before his death in 1936. That your Wikipedia has that he appeared in non-vampiric roles, that's how I want to go out. Willem Dafoe was hired as the Green Goblin in Spider-Man after the producers watched his performance in this. This is the first movie that Nicolas Cage produced, which I believe his production company is called Saturn. I believe that's what it was called. Willem Dafoe's portrayal of Max Schreck was nominated for an Academy Award. This is the only time anybody has ever been nominated for a vampire performance. That was at the bottom of IMDb trivia, so take that with a grain of salt. The bottom IMDb trivia before you get to the spoilers, that's the good shit right there. They just say shit that it is so terrible. It's just like, this person says that this person is a clown. In 2016, they both appeared in It Chapter 2. And you're like, what?
What was the trivia you shared in our group chat for Kinsey about like the airports or whatever that like Kinsey said at? It's like, this is at like a Fresno airport or whatever, and they ask if they want to go like take a walk. Before, people might not remember this, but before 9/11, you could just go like walk around like the airport or whatever, wherever you wanted.
Oh, it was like before 9/11, you could show up on your flight 5 minutes before it. It was just like, what does this have to do with the movie? Watching Kinsey was strange because I remember growing up that was like a big kids in mind. The sex section is number 10 and it's so graphic. Yep. And then I watched it. I was like, besides like 1 or 2 shots, this is like a PG, almost PG-13 movie. I really built it up in my head that this was like rated X or something like that.
What was the way you described it last week, Kevin, where you were like, it's basically Liam Neeson being like, Dad, I talk about boners. and
he just pretty much like, there's a scene where he's just like, guess what, John Lithgow? I make my living talking about boners. And then John Lithgow's like, I will have none of this.
I've never seen it, but sold.
That's pretty much the movie. And then it's just like, Laura Linney, you're here sometimes. She's very good in it, though. Chris O'Donnell being in a movie post-Batman and post-Bachelor is pretty funny. Pre-NCIS, of course. But yeah, that's... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just as, like, I'm realizing now, with Gods and Monsters and now with this, I am sad to admit that my first Ian McKellen role was Magneto.
Oh, hell yeah.
And my first Willem Dafoe role was Green Goblin and Spider-Man. And I'm like, God damn it. Even back then, this is how I got, like, indoctrinated into these actors' things. I know I can't stand those fucking movies, but I will
could
say...
be worse, because I'm pretty sure my first Willem Dafoe was Speed 2. So...
that movie...
And at least, to be fair, Spider-Man holds up, and Spider-Man 2 holds up. I have not rewatched X-Men in a very long time.
Are you not going back to that or Apt Pupil anytime soon?
I've never seen Apt Pupil. I read the novella like that, but I don't have any interest in returning to the Bryan Singer well anytime soon.
Wow,
so,
that's him and Brett Ratner. What are you going to do without their movies? But sure, go ahead.
Oh, God, what would I do without Red Dragon?
What would I do without Rush Hour 3, a movie I constantly forget they made a sequel of?
Saw that in theaters. Also with Dafoe, I guess, I mean, I saw the Spider-Man movies like a bunch when I was a kid, but I feel like maybe the first time I maybe connected the man to the name, I think it was Mr. Bean's Holiday, which I saw in theaters. The whole bit in that movie is that he's the director who I think like Mr. Bean accidentally blows him up on the set of one of his movies, and then they go to a film festival where Dafoe is showing this very serious thriller where it's like a lot of like, monotone monologues and everything, and then Mr. Bean starts doing finger puppets on the projection, and everyone like who's like sleeping throughout Dafoe's movie, they like jolt awake and are like, haha, this is so funny and everything, and Dafoe's like, yeah.
Mr. Bean kicks ass. Oh God, what a way to be indoctrinated by Dafoe. My first movie was The Nameless. Yeah, I watched that when I was like 8. No, I'm kidding.
Roll camera. Iris in. Begin.
It's been a fitful night, but you wake refreshed. What is that beside you? It's a book about vampires. Nosferatu.
Director F.W. Murnau had an obsession to create the world's most realistic vampire movie.
Meet Count Orlok.
An overture to our Symphony of Horrors.
He dug up an actor.
I'd like some makeup. Well, you don't get any.
Who didn't just play the part.
But you're not feeding. No, you're not drinking her blood.
He lived it.
What is the matter with you?
Where did you find him, really?
From Lionsgate Films and producer Nicolas Cage, comes the haunting tale of the uncompromising.
You will have no close-ups now.
The unimaginable.
Blood! Blood!
And the undead. Academy Award nominees John Malkovich.
I will finish my picture!
And Willem Dafoe.
This is hardly your picture any longer.
Shadow of the Vampire.
How dare you destroy my photographer? Why not the script girl? I'll eat her later.
Yeah, so that's all the trivia I got. So I'll go ahead and go first. I thought this was fine, and this is very, very... I can still see the little begotten flourishes from the same director, like, still 11 years later, especially when it goes from the color to the very, the black and white, and it's all dirty and whatnot, and it does really good to recreate how it looks, and there is a lot of shots where it's just taken from Nosferatu because it's public domain, and I don't know, it's a fine time. It's more so once it gets to the end of it, it's just like you're not saying much with it. I know it's going off of a legend, but also it's very, very kind of by the books, but John Malkovich is kind of hamming it up a little bit, while I feel like Willem Dafoe is going to the extreme, but is very successful in it. I was definitely watching this, and I was just like, I thought Carrie Elwes is in this, and then he doesn't show up until like an hour in. I was like, sir, we have 20 minutes left.
But he's like third build, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very fine, interesting movie that makes you want to... It's definitely like a good mainstream calling card movie, and then that man cashed it in to make Suspect Zero, so it's like... yeah. But it's... Oh, God.
To be a little bit fair to Marriage, Suspect Zero, as bad as that movie is, I don't think he was the first choice to direct that movie. It sounds like, if you read about it, it was like a lot of turnover of like people who dropped in and out of like wanting to direct that movie. And if you see the movie, you understand why people would maybe not want their names on it. But
yeah. Is there really anybody else besides Carrie-Anne Moss and the main three people that were in it? I'm trying to...
Tom Cruise's cousin, William Apother, because it's a Cruise Wagner production.
Oh my God.
Oh God.
Wow. Yeah, I started that movie like 7 days ago, watched 30 minutes, 3 days ago, watched another 30 minutes, and finished it today. I did it while doing other things. Yeah. But yeah, Charlie, what are your initial thoughts with Shadow of the Vampire?
So, I had never seen this. I did, and this is true, my first Willem Dafoe performance that I saw in an actual movie was Spider-Man. I do remember watching the Oscars when I was 9, and he was nominated, and he had his clip, I believe, was the "Don't look at me like that," and I remember thinking, oh my God, this movie looks horrifying as a kid, because like everything was intense as a kid. I remember Joaquin Phoenix's Oscar clip was him stabbing Russell Crowe in the back, being like, "Smile for me, brother," and being like, "I'm not allowed to see that," like, that type of thing. So I'd known about this for a while. I've seen Nosferatu. It was mandatory viewing in, if any, for all film school students. And I agree, Kevin, it's not really saying anything, but I found it to be a hoot, as I put it with the group chat, where, like, it's just fun. I think, once again, like Gods and Monsters, although for completely different reasons, the cast of this thing is just, like, a camp dream. I mean, John Malkovich,
it's stacked.
Dafoe, Udo Kier, Eddie Izzard, and even Carrie Elwes, who is having fun even though he's not in it as much. I just thought, yeah, it's, it builds to exactly what you think it's going to build to, but as a dark comedy, and as a, like, why don't they make, biopics like this anymore, or pseudo biopics like this anymore. I found it to be an interesting time capsule, and I agree with you, Chris, that the fact that Dafoe was nominated for this at all is wild. It's just insane. I have not seen the Herzog Nosferatu. Has anyone else seen that?
Yeah, I meant to watch
since
that.
I was a
didn't get
kid.
to.
When you were a kid, yeah.
I watched it when I was a kid because, like, randomly, it would be the HBO movie that they would play at, like, 6 a.m. before going to school. And, like, I watched it. I was like, what the hell is this? As, like, a third grader. So.
I love that Wait, did your parents let you watch HBO when you were in third grade going to school?
They didn't pay attention. It was fine.
Yeah, I guess I just think it's fun as an actor showcase. I know that, like, if you make this type of movie, there are, like, lots of, cheap, very wink, nudge ways you can go about this now. I'm trying to think of, like, you know, just, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this is so... The director does sound like he's kind of full of shit in the commentary, Kevin. I found there would be enough artistry in here and enough of a smart, we're just kind of doing this as a joke type of atmosphere to the aestheticism of all of it without taking itself too seriously. And I can't deny it. I mean, I love Willem Dafoe, and just watching him literally chew scenery and other things in this movie is a lot of fun. It's very silly and very it's not subtle by any means, but you know, like, I don't know, I had a fun time with it, even though I don't think it's saying anything profound or necessarily altering the way we view Nosferatu in any very even though it's not complicating the legacy of, you know, the historical film it's based on, like, or historically and culturally significant film it's based on. I did think it was just kind of fun. So it's gothic fluff, I guess. I don't know.
Bryden, initial thoughts?
Yeah, hadn't seen this before. I thought it was okay. You know, you've used the words slight, I guess, to, you know, break up with a source, so I'll say it's minor. Yeah, no, it's, I do one thing that I think is interesting as sort of a point of contrast with Gods and Monsters, which we were talking about in the previous ep, about how, like, Condon doesn't really, like, try to adopt the look of, like, a James Whale movie unless he's doing, like, the dream sequences or, you know, like, trying to recreate the scenes from, you know, from the movies that that Whale was directing. I kind of got to tip my cap to Marriage here for actually trying to make this, not necessarily make it look like a Murnau movie, although there is that, you know, he does mimic the shot of, like, you know, like the clawed hand, like the shadow of it, like creeping up, like along the staircase, which is like, that's just a great image to recreate. It's cool that he tries to actually make this look and feel like a horror movie, like throughout the whole thing, not just in the scenes where they're making the horror movie. That's pretty cool. And I would say maybe you know, this is, like, obviously going for, like, a very comical premise where it's, like, hiring an actual vampire to play a vampire. Like, that is a very, like, you know, heightened premise. I don't know that Marriage, not even that, like, I think this movie is, like, necessarily unfunny, but I wasn't laughing a whole bunch during this movie. I don't know if it's maybe because there's, like, kind of a stifling atmosphere to it that maybe stifles the comedy to it, and I don't know. There's also, like, a weird thing with this movie where, like, I guess Max Schreck in the movie as this vampire he's imagined to be, like, is, like, killing off the crew, but there's, like, I feel like the movie's weirdly lacking in that kind of tension, both, like, in terms of, like, suspense and also comedy and everything, where, like, it almost, like, kind of puts it in randomly, where, like, he, like, throws someone off of a ship, and then, like, they more, like, address, like, the crew disappearing and, like, you know, like just a throwaway line of dialogue, and it's, like, I feel like the movie has a bit of, like, herky-jerky pacing where I feel like it doesn't really kick into high gear until, like, the last 20 minutes when it is, like, they're filming the scene. Like, the actress's life is actually in danger. And you also, that's the other weird thing is, like, I went into, if you read the synopsis in the movie on Letterboxd, which, like, you know, that I shouldn't necessarily hold this against the movie, but it's like, yeah, Murnau made, like, a bargain with Shrek to be in this movie, you know, for, like, the possession of this actress or whatever. That's, like, the deal or whatever. But you don't find that out until, like, you're really deep into the movie. And this is, like, it's a very short movie. It's billed as 86 minutes, but, like, cut out those credits, the movie stops at, like, 80 minutes. So, like, you don't have, like, a whole lot of room to flesh this stuff out. And then there's, like, weird stuff where, like, you get, like, stuff about, like, Murnau is, like, I guess, apparent opium addiction, and, like, that's kind of, like, a tossed on detail. So there's, like, kind of stuff in this movie that I don't think entirely holds together. Not necessarily, like, a logic standpoint, I'm fine with that. But like, and also, talking about gods and monsters and like the legacy of Murnau and stuff, it's like when you're making the movie this heightened about like he hiring an actual vampire, it's like, well, vampires aren't real, so obviously I'm gonna take like everything with like a grain of salt. Yeah, there's some fun imagery here. Like I like all the high angle shots, like where you're like adopting Shrek's perspective as he's like looming over everyone and watching them, and the old timey sort of techniques where there's like a shot where the train's leaving the station, you've like superimposed like Murnau over like the castle that he's going to, and like the steam. It's very stylish and like atmospheric. So like that's really cool, and good use of sound design, like sort of like just the sound of the running film as all of it is as like the final climax is taking place. I like all the performances for the most part. Cary Elwes, I felt like was hamming it up a little too much. I feel like it's clear that he's doing an accent just sort of by like clenching his throat and everything and talking kind of nasally. But Dafoe is probably like the main draw for this movie. I mean,
of course.
It's so interesting when he plays like villainous characters, how he can like bring these flickers of vulnerability to like even the most monstrous people. I mean, the way that like when he's first brought the blood in his little cave lair that he's in, like he's sort of like, his hands are sort of like hovering over the blood, like he's almost afraid to touch it and everything before he just like digs in and everything there. And when he's like, seems genuinely nervous, like confronting Catherine McCormick at the end when he's like, flicking out the director's chair, almost like he's doing like a magic trick and everything. Like it is like these weird moments that are almost like kind of shy, like there's something very shy about him that is like kind of funny, but then like he will be very scary and everything with like just like the eyes and everything, and of course the way that he's made up. But so yeah, like I don't know. I think this is a minor work, and I don't know that it necessarily adds up to a whole lot. And I think there are pacing issues, but there's definitely stuff to admire here. Yeah.
I was just watching the trailer on mute because when Charlie was talking about it, I do remember seeing the trailer on like a pre-DVD or pre-VHS rundown or whatever, and being like really scared because I was like, how does a man look like that? And I was 8, so I was just like, what's wrong with that man? And they exploited him for this film. This is 2 years after I realized that the people in Scream were not actually killed, so maybe don't think about that. I did find a very funny trivia fact on Wikipedia. It has all the cast in it. It says the film depicts several of the major characters as being killed by that vampire. However, historically, these individuals continued to live long lives after the film's production. Oh, I thought this was real. Oh no.
There was I don't know if any of you follow Kyle Amato on Letterboxd, but his review
I love Kyle.
Yeah, he's great.
His
Letterboxd review was, "This actually happened. I'm telling people."
And then another funny trivia fact that I forgot to throw in is the film's working title was Burned to Light, but Marriage decided to change the title of the film when Dafoe asked, "Who's Ed?" The actor thought the title was Burn Ed to Light. So instead of just explaining, no, it's Burned to Light, he was like, fuck it, we'll change it. Boy. Chris, initial thoughts.
This movie could not be more fan fiction, as we are saying. I think this movie is incredibly lucky to have the performance that Dafoe gives, the level that he's performing at, and just how funny and how actually scary he is in this movie.
He can be very funny and very scary in like the same scene. He's really good.
In the same breath. Because I think, he's that kind of very rare breed of performance that is so good that it elevates the movie. Like, I don't think that maybe it was intentional for them to make a funny movie, but it's incredibly funny. Mm-hmm. Because of the performer, and I would even say Malkovich, because Malkovich is doing so much in this movie that it's funny. But like, I don't know. I mean, like you were all saying, this is a very muddied point of view of terms of what this movie's intentions are, and it's a frustrating watch in that regard. Like, eventually, the movie, like an hour in, fully kind of just falls apart. Because you also kind of lose focus of the Dafoe performance at that point too, so it becomes significantly less entertaining. Mm-hmm. But like, it is frustrating because it's so close to being the movie you kind of want it to be. That's like a satire of like, for lack of a better term, method performing, which of course, like, has, people never get sick of talking about it or talking shit about it, basically. And, like, people misusing what the method actually is, etc., and, like, turning it into this really interesting comedy or this really interesting fan fiction horror movie. But yeah, I love Dafoe's performance in this. Could not be more entertained by it. And the movie's kind of a very enjoyable mess until it's not enjoyable anymore.
Yeah,
I did. Oh, sorry, Kevin. Yeah,
I was just gonna say, like, the last 20 minutes is like what I really wanted, but by that time I just quit caring, because it like really gets serious at the end, where it's it's just like he made this Faustian agreement with him and stuff like that to like sacrifice this woman, and then the light is gonna kill him, but is he even actually there? But it's on film, so it makes it real type of thing, where it's just like, yeah, but I was joking with the Longfinger guy like 10 minutes ago, so this is kind of a weird thing to be bringing in. But it's like, in theory, the last 20 minutes would be good, but it's just like I feel I didn't really care at that point. But like I said, Dafoe's going off. I love it. Charlie,
do you think it would have been an even better, more darkly effective comedy if we knew about the reveal an hour in that John Malkovich is aware of, like, that it makes the audience aware of the deal that John Malkovich has made with him, and how it could be more of a statement on method acting as opposed to just making that into the 20-minute payoff, which I think is the point of the build-up, is that they do want us to know as an audience that clearly he's a vampire, but it doesn't make us aware that John Malkovich is in on it. Whereas, like, because I did think about certain method, I mean, like, this movie's not wrong in how it depicts method acting as, like, terrible. I mean, look at fucking, I can't believe I'm about to bring this up, but look at Jared Leto in Suicide Squad. I mean, like, the stories that came out about how he sent dead rats and used condoms to, Margot Robbie, and like,
that's twisted. I don't know what you're talking about.
but we as, like, an audience, I feel like we've gotten better as consumers now of, like, yeah, that's so full of shit and that's not okay and stuff like that, but he's still getting work, and, like, we think that's just bullshit and stuff like that, and obviously that's not the same level in, like, hiring an actual vampire, but, like, there is something, I feel like, by maybe, and I know this is the whole why didn't you make this movie argument, which I hate doing, but maybe it would have been even funnier if it made it Malkovich more culpable earlier on in knowing that he's eating the crew, as opposed to just the whole, it's kind of a twist, that, like, he's fully aware and the rest of the crew is completely oblivious, even though, like, and that's not funny. I did laugh where he keeps eating the same guy, like, over and over again. They're just like, oh, Jesus, what a drama queen. Get up, have some whiskey and go to bed. Like, I found it to be funny, but it's almost like an interesting prediction of the future in that way, as a hyper stylized satire. But I mean, what are some other actors? I know in the last episode of American Psycho we've talked about how, like, Christian Bale, I feel like I've had an eating disorder with him in every checkout aisle of every supermarket for the past 7 years. Like, a
lot of people wanted to really kind of roast Jeremy Strong after the Profile.
Yeah, like, because method acting does suck, but I think that the culpability of it does also fall onto the hands of the filmmakers of, are they providing a safe environment for people,
right?
Like, in as a sacrifice for allowing someone's ego to be, quote unquote, the star of the film, which the movie does get into, that of, like, that power dynamic of, you're not the star, I'm the star, in terms of, like, subject and who's behind the camera. But I do, and maybe it's 2022 brain, where this was released over 20 years ago, and maybe I'm just thinking about this now and what it could have been, which isn't fair, but I was just wondering if anyone else had similar thoughts, I guess.
Well, Couple of things I guess maybe to respond to with what you said. I mean, I feel like the thing I hear about, I don't know much about method acting, but I feel like the thing I hear people say is like, method acting isn't inherently bad. What's bad is like people misunderstanding it and like them like using that as an excuse to be like a shithead or whatever.
That's
yes. Jared Leto is not a method actor.
No,
he doesn't know what the method is.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I could easily imagine this movie being funny with like Malkovich, like his cover-ups of like Shrek, being a vampire and everything, being so flimsy, and like I guess the dramatic irony of like people being in these situations, like oh no, they don't know what they're in for. Like I can imagine that being funny, but then you're right about how like I think that again, I don't know that marriage for my taste at least, and I guess it's subjective in terms of what I find funny. I don't know that he necessarily. I don't know that like his flavor of comedy, or if he's like injected his movie with like the right amount of comedy for me to find this funny. But I guess it's preferable to them like where like they're like practically turning to the camera and like doing like, oh, look at this reference that we're making. Look at how like that would be insufferable. So I'm glad the movie's not that at least.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
With method acting, I would say that it's always the funny thing that I would always look at. I would always think of method acting as like looking on articles or IMDb back in the day where it's just like this person got so in the role that like around lunchtime on the film they would eat away from the cast so they wouldn't know him, and I was like, holy shit, that's awesome, man. But now it's gone completely, way past that. Chris, what were you saying?
No, I mean, I was going to say, like, even aside from, like, the method acting conversation, like, I think to, like, answer kind of your question, Charlie, about, like, what it is about this movie, I think it's just one of those movies where it's, like, it's so clear what all the ideas going on are, and none of them are fully working or don't work for the whole movie, that it's, like, you get such the clear version of this movie that is great in your mind, and it's so clear as you're watching this movie that it's not the great version of this movie. And that's what I think a lot of that comes from.
And yet it is 88 minutes, which when you look at the runtime is like, oh boy, a clean 88 minutes, and then I did walk away kind of thirsty for more, which is weird.
I guess the other thing too, like we're talking about like how this movie is like perhaps a commentary on like actors like committing to the role maybe too much. I mean, I guess you could also apply it to like directors too, like when you hear stories where like look at what this director put his crew through and everything, like James Cameron nearly drowned Ed Harris for The Abyss or whatever, and it's like and like I guess like, oh man, like how far will one man go to like get his vision? And it's like, I guess that's like a funny idea, but it's also, I don't know how much there is like underneath it, especially because I feel like Murnau here is not really much of a character. I mean, like Malkovich, I think is fun, sort of like when he's like sort of vamping it up, like and I am the director and everything, like gesticulating and all that. But like it's, I also feel like he disappears weirdly for like a large chunk of the movie because he's just like, oh yeah, he went to look for someone,
another cinematographer.
Another cinematographer. Yeah. And then, like the next time you see him, he's like stoned on opium in the bedroom, and he's like I did a terrible thing, and it's like okay, yeah, but.
And is that? I guess that's the other thing. Well, I mean, guess maybe that jumps into the plot. We'll get into that later. Yeah.
Oh no, the plot is kind of all over the goddamn place, so I really don't want to get into that because it's very lengthy for no reason. It's like you could sum it up really easy, but this one is just like when they returned and so was talking with so and so, they decided that so and so was going to be, and it's just way overblown for no reason. So, what you were trying to bring up, you can go ahead.
I guess it's just like, is that supposed to be the character arc even in a... Yeah, I guess what you were saying, Chris, I viewed it as a dark comedy, but now I'm like second guessing myself because I'm like, well, maybe like, because is that supposed to be
the DVD
like
says that it has a biting sense of humor, so...
Puns. Jesus Christ. The hyperbole. But yeah, like I am wondering, is that supposed to be like, that's not a dramatically compelling or darkly funny turn that he's just high on opium, because it's like, well, everyone was high on opium back then. Like I don't know, yeah. like, and that's supposed to be his big but he still goes through with like drugging the actress and that whole thing. So like, there's no real bite. There's no real like, I almost used the word.
There's
biting.
There's no bite.
And now I want to.
Really?
And now I want to jump in front of a car.
Okay.
There's like no. There's no like real damning sense of like culpability to Malkovich's character in a way that you can get away with. Obviously, I mean, like I think Wolf of Wall Street, the whole fact that he's fine at the end after a 3-hour marathon of just utter cruelty and utter carnival-esque carnage, like I think that movie works like in that way, but there's really no like statement on was it all worth it, like what you know, how his psyche's affected by it. It's just he gets what he wants. Now the movie's over.
Well,
you know, like
his mind seems kind of fractured, where he's like giving directions to Udo Kier, who's lying dead, like with his like off in front of the camera. He's like giving him, filming directions. It's like that guy's dead. Like it's not.
Yeah, but even that's not really funny. That's kind of like going into the horror aspects of it all.
Which marriage doesn't quite maybe walk that line so well. I mean, also like maybe. Perhaps me saying like the stifling tone of this movie or how he sort of strangles the comedy out of it. I feel like the opening music, it does make it feel like more of a horror movie, where it's like kind of like the echoey, you can hear like the scratch of the francophone and everything, and then like these like, you know, big like bombastic strings. I couldn't tell. I'm a bit silly. Like I didn't know if it was like, because they like cite like Tchaikovsky, I think, as music in the movie. I should have looked up to see if that was like classical music that was playing at the start, or if it was just the film score. But yeah, the music does definitely points you in a different tone than like the sort of laugh riot you might be expecting. But yeah.
Laugh riot.
I mean, there are this funny stuff. I don't know, the whole scene where Willem Dafoe like just grabs a bat that's in mid-flight. And
that's great.
And they're all just kind of like, ew. Like they don't really do much.
Like, wow, what an actor. Yeah.
And then he just takes the bottle of vodka. I don't know. I think that the whole vodka chugging is pretty funny too. You know, like
just the idea that they're like, is this the most impressive actor I've ever seen, or like, is this a vampire and am I unsafe? Just like the constant questioning of that by some of the other actors is funny.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Especially if they're played by Udo Kier and Eddie Izzard, you know, like. Or I do think it's funny that Eddie Izzard is always just like more concerned with and understandably so his own well-being, but doesn't really give a shit about anybody else. Like he's very. Like, I can't think of any lines off the top of my head, but he's always just like, oh, I need to go to bed after that, or like, you know.
A couple of things. It's interesting because I don't know how widely this was reported, but in the last few years, Eddie Izzard, I think has started using she pronouns.
Yes. No. I'm so sorry about
it's fine. And like,
pronouns.
Look, she is playing a male character in the movie, or a character who presents as male, so it's totally fine. But I saw it. I figured it'd be good to mention it just for the record. There is that scene though, talking about like sort of like the sort of like the nonchalance and everything with which the presence of like all this bad shit that's happening. I guess one joke that I do remember being funny is when the camera's like trapped, and it's kind of creepy showing like how like the evilness is sort of able to permeate these barriers and everything. Like the camera like tracks horizontally like past the walls and everything. Izzard just walking through the room, and then she turns around and she's like, "Oh, jeez, like what are you doing here?" And then like it turns a little bit, and there's like someone standing in the foreground. I think it's the guy who got bit, like the cinematographer who got bitten by Shrek, and it's like, just like, oh gosh, like what am I doing in here in this room? But yeah, so that's.
But
that's
she and like everyone else are more annoyed than everything.
Exactly,
else, which is what
that's
I
the
think
perfect
is
way
funny.
to describe it.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry about I completely.
It's okay.
forgot
No,
about the
like
pronouns.
now's a good time to bring it up. It was going to come out at some point, so yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Her performance of just in the scene, just looking off and just like very distressed at what this guy is doing, just never not. She's the first one to notice it. It's very funny to me. Yeah.
I was gonna say I mean, this is like such a like probably like a basic observation, but like, she's just so well cast as a silent movie actor, just in terms of a look, but then also the actual playing of the acting style. I thought she did amazing.
Oh yeah, it was so good. Just the caked on makeup that she has when it goes back to color, you can notice that.
And there's also that good line of when Dafoe's like, where's my makeup? You don't get any. And he's and
it's funny too, like you're just sort of like thinking about movies being made then and everything, like how they had no sound or anything. So that gives like Murnau the right to just sort of like monologue about like what the actress emotional beats are gonna be. And it's funny how like when Murnau's directing Shrek, like when he knows that like he's been killing the crew and everything, he starts like saying, "You're an evil fucking monster" or whatever, just like like cursing him out. It's like this isn't gonna make it in. So yeah.
Yeah, just directing in the sense of like they've never seen the script for this, just show up on set and I'll tell you what's going to happen type of thing is so funny.
Mm-hmm. And it does get into the whole, wait, we traveled all this way for like one, like, 2-minute shot or something like that. Like there seems to be something building about, Murnau's culpability and all of it, but it doesn't really have that punch at the end of like, was it all worth it, or was it even worth it for him? Was like we all know Nosferatu's a history changing work of art, but like
it made other movies too that are very famous, which is the funny thing to think about too. But yes, continue.
I guess I just wanted more of a like, and again, some movies the lack of a punchline is the punchline, of course, but like I feel like it kind of comes off as like, I thought that it was going to be really, like, there was going to be some sort of revelation at the end that was going to shift into something subversive that wasn't really there. Chris, as you mentioned, that there's so much in this, there's almost too many cooks in the kitchen, or, like, too much in the stew to just, like, make sure it all,
or there's, like,
correctly.
Scenes missing that they didn't film. Like, it feels like there were never any script notes, or they literally didn't film crucial scenes.
Yeah, because something like this, it's 80 minutes with no credits or whatnot. It's like, I was surprised I thought this was like a 2-hour movie, so it kind of feels like it got edited down like a son of a bitch. But yeah, I think the problem with the ending scene is it may be, Charlie, what you were saying, if they didn't reveal it at the start, but I guess it tries to play it like it is like this reveal that it's like, oh, he went this far to make this type of movie, that he hired somebody that was going to put his cast in jeopardy and whatnot. But it just, at that point, it's just like, it doesn't really feel like the shocking reveal or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, I could have kind of saw that coming. So it really defangs the ending, I will say.
There's it's not sharp enough. There's no sting to the bite. I don't know.
It sucks. No, I'm joking.
It's bloodless.
It's bloodless.
I also wanted to issue a correction on my own. The composer in the movie is not Tchaikovsky. It's Wagner. Not the same. But
wow. You dumb idiot. Wow. Oh, man. Like 80-year-old people that are listening to this are just flabbergasted you would mix them up.
Is it the same Wagner track they use in Melancholia? Am I making that
up? I don't know. I've never seen Melancholia. I'll probably watch it as a bunch of research when we do Dogville, which will be a fun time.
Look, Melancholia is fucking worth it. That's one of the best movies of the 2010s, in my opinion. But
Wagner heads are screaming at the pod right now.
We at the Coolidge we do have this program called Science on Screen, where we get an instructor or a professor of some kind to come in and do like a half-hour presentation on the movie you're about to watch and how it is scientifically relevant to stuff that we are still examining today.
So here's Geostorm.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of wondering, we have Melancholia lined up, and I'm just imagining the professor being like, so this is real. Like, if you look up into the sky...
Kiefer Sutherland, who was based on a friend of mine. Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be about depression, because it's one of the best films about depression I've ever seen. But that would be really funny if we got like some conspiracy theorist by accident.
You're next. You're next. Just start screaming.
We get Michael Shannon in Take Shelter.
Oh my gosh! Great pull.
Yeah. Final thoughts on Shadow of the Vampire?
I was curious if I'm drawing blanks when thinking about this, but are there any other movies that are kind of like about like legends of like filmmaking that kind of like take them, like that sort of reimagine them, like instead of like, oh, like the story is like that this happened on this movie set, and then like this movie sort of like taking like a fantasy or fictionalized approach to it, like in sort of.
You mean like Mommy Dearest?
Oh, I was reading about that in Michael Koreski's Films of Endearment book. That's like one of the movies he watches with his mom.
That's a great book.
I'm loving it so far.
It's a good book. I don't know. Have you seen this? It's a hilarious movie called Disaster Artist. Yeah, let's check that out.
Oh, you know what? Which I can't believe I didn't think about this. Book of Shadows is kind of in that same vein, where it's like think of like, oh, we're looking at like what the legend of this movie is and everything. It's like, oh, is it actually real? And then when they try to engage with it, that shit happens. It's like, I don't know, like not as good, I would say.
Besmirch the good name of Book of Shadows by bringing it up. Okay, fantastic film.
But the irony of The Disaster Artist is once James Franco won the Golden Globe, that's when everything crumbled for him, too. Where everyone did speak up and was like, yeah, this guy is abusive and awful, and he fucking sucks. Yeah. And also, Tommy Wiseau, as I have mentioned, I mean, I met the guy. He's also an abusive piece of shit. So, like, who knew that awarding James Franco, who's this huge egomaniac, for playing a character that he sympathized with a little too much, without as much of a bite, could result.
I'm editing that out. I'm bleeping that out. Okay. Yeah, and Golden Globes really liked Franco because they nominated him for Pineapple Express as well, which was like, whoa, what the hell? Yeah, because that was never going to get an Oscar. But I mean, stuff like that is why the Golden Globes, I mean, they shouldn't exist after all the shit that came out, but stuff like that where it's just like, this is never going to get to Oscars, but good for them that they got a nomination. But
yeah, like when you talk about like that was like his downfall, it's like the Golden Globes, like an award that like isn't taken seriously by people, that was like what led to the downfall. Like there is like something like very odd about that detail, but yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.